This morning, we want to help look or talk through the next 3 years, the remaining years of high school experience. We know not everybody's freshman year goes exactly like they picture. And so we just want to keep talking through the remainder of those years and what that looks like. We'll surface on testing. We want to talk a little bit about discovering, developing, and employing those God given gifts. We know every one of your students has been gifted by God with aptitudes and personalities, and high school is a time to start discovering those. They don't have to know what they're going to do with the rest of their life by the time they graduate, but we want to help unwrap some of those layers. We want to introduce a little bit of the college timeline and spend the bulk of our time on course selection, and as we refer to it as the 4-year planning, to help aid in any goals that the student has that they want to accomplish before they graduate. And we know that the course schedule has so much impact on just their overall wellness and overall success. In addition to our fits during the high school years, we want to start planting those seeds for finding a fit at our next destination. So after graduation, where is that college fit going to be? Continuing in that trajectory. So when we're having those conversations, we wanted you to know where we're coming from to help aid your student. We know that it's natural in human nature to have comparisons. We want to help offset that by helping your student ultimately find balance in where they're finding what classes are going to be the fit, what social organizations, and how can we have the stewardship process of college fit is life fit. College prep is life prep. In the guidance office, we want to help support the end goal of keeping the main thing with Luke 2:52. As Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man, we know that that journey is not going to look perfect, but we want to help partner with you to help support your student in that journey. We also want you to know just our definitions of when we're working with you and your student. We want to help your student find their fit, and what that means from us is an academic, social, spiritual, and emotional fit. So we don't want the student to be underwhelmed or overwhelmed. We know none of these categories operate in silos as we're multidimensional characters, and so we know that they are interconnected. Their academic wellness will support or hinder their emotional wellness, and so we want to help the student think through what is that appropriate level of rigor. How much can we be involved in school and out of school? And most importantly, how are we going to grow in our emotional, in our spiritual fit? Meaning, what can we be involved in? How do we still allow space and make sure that we have time to attend church and ministries and those summer opportunities that really allow them to grow? All pre-AP or eventually AP junior senior. Does that mean it's right for them? Okay, so walking through those questions, it may not be right for them, depending what they have going on outside of school and complete balance and stewarding that process. And so you'll see that line that says sameness bores. We're very fortunate to have had Dr. Moss with us for so many years, who's part-time this year. And that line really comes from him as far as sameness bores. When he was dean of admissions for almost 40 years, he would say he would get so tired of reading the same applications that we're reading to what the student thought was a formula. I have to do X, Y, Z, and that's what I do to get admitted. But when colleges are looking at students, they're trying to build a class, not just a formula. And so if a student is really good in this one thing, let's encourage that one thing versus over here we think that they have to do 20 things just to have a resume. That's not what colleges are looking for anymore. So when we say, in our office, we say college prep is life prep, right? And it's okay to try something and realize you do not like that thing. That's just as important as realizing what you do like and just being able to articulate that later on from a college perspective and then just life as well. So when we're talking about that college prep, life prep, what main components are we looking at? So again, we're not looking for a formula, but we're looking at 5 main categories. So if we're helping equip you and equip your student just to walk through this process, these are the 5 main categories that we keep it organized in. GPA. Right now, your freshmen, when they finish this year, they are 1/3 through the way of that GPA that they will apply to for college. For some students, they're like, okay. For some students, that freaks them out, and some students, they're excited. It's all over the board. We're used to that. But there is time to strengthen. We tell students a lot of times freshman year may not have gone exactly like you thought it would, because there's so much change and different challenges. But the point from here on is the trajectory. Okay, so let's just keep going up. Now, that being said, sometimes sophomore or junior year, life happens. We have a little bit of a dip and then it comes down. You'll see there where it says essays or letters of recommendation. They'll have an opportunity to speak into that. Sometimes that's a lot of what we spend time on with students, is when that life event occurs, their immediate is, but now I won't ever get into college. That's not the truth. We have time to speak into that and help them articulate that. And so please don't let that be the first stressor that comes along with what's already happening. You do see that note that says rigor of the curriculum. That's where we go back to that academic fit, appropriate level of challenge. So encouraging your student to, that one area of memory they're already excelling, maybe sophomore year is the year to kind of step it up into that pre-AP. If they didn't try anything freshman year, or maybe freshman year was all pre-AP and it was so overwhelming and they weren't sleeping and they weren't having any time with family, then maybe we need to drop it down one during the sophomore year. So those are conversations, and that's where Mrs. King and I are happy to help come alongside you with that. Testing, we'll talk about that actually here in just a minute. SAT, ACT, everybody's favorite thing. Your resume really at this point should be just exploration and discovery. Again, just seeing what they like, what they're willing to try. Again, back in our day, it was kind of the thought that you had to have 20 things on the resume and that was the only thing that was going to impress them. That is no more. Colleges want depth more than quantity. So if there are those 1 or 2 things that they already know they enjoy, or they're going to experience, say, on a mission trip or camp this year or a family trip, whatever it is, then let's dig into those. Some of your students are very naturally doing 10 things, and that's just the way that they're wired, but that's not for everybody, and we don't want that to be an extra stressor because that's not really the formula anymore. Letters of recommendation, we'll just be telling your students that character matters. So when colleges read letters of recommendation from teachers, what they're wanting to hear from a teacher is their level of engagement. Are they willing to ask questions? It isn't always, oh, this student aced my class. The student really struggled, but they never gave up. They have grit, they have perseverance. They were willing to come into tutoring. That's what the teacher's speaking into. The counselors write letters of recommendation for the student, and we're speaking a little more to their character and the potential to excel at the college level. So the more we get to know your student, the more we get to speak into that. And then essays, we tell a student, you don't have to worry about that now. That's going to be summer after your junior year. But just by being a good student and doing all that writing that their teachers are having them do, and then maybe, if they're the kind of student that journals or takes notes or something like that, that can be part of that. It's just life experiences is what they're going to end up writing on. And then we do give them a reminder that social media digital footprint does matter. So not every college uses it, but a lot of colleges are upfront and they'll say, actually, we check it before we do scholarship offers. If they're going to invest in the student, they want to know, is the student the same in the light as they are in the dark? So that's where that piece comes into. Okay, so testing, it is still a reality. You may have heard, like on the news this past year, that all the colleges were going test optional. If you have an older student, if you have a junior or senior, this is definitely part of your conversation right now. Seniors, this was a huge stressor this year, but just to kind of talk through this. So your student had the opportunity to come pick up their PSAT and their pre-ACT. If they didn't, we will be giving them back in class Tuesday or Wednesday. So just know if you haven't seen it, you should see it by the middle of the week. So what does that look like going forward? So in 10th grade, they will be taking both of those again, the pre-SAT
and the PSAT. They'll be taking both 10th grade year. And then in 11th grade, that's when they'll take one more PSAT, and then they take what we just call the for reals, SAT and ACT. So just a little bit on that test optional, because this is a lot of conversation going on right now. Test optional in of itself is not a new concept. A lot of colleges have been doing this for 5 years plus. Some colleges just don't even have it. Some colleges will have an alternate, like an interview or an extra essay, and so we prep the student for that. Obviously, with COVID necessitated, since so many students couldn't even test, most schools went test optional, with the exception of the state of Florida and the state of Louisiana never went test optional for any of their public schools. So that gives you an example that it wasn't just across the bat. But what that meant was if a student had a test, then we also helped counsel them as far as, yes, this is a positive profile. We should go ahead and submit the test. Or you know what? Everything else is so strong, the test isn't necessary in this application. So that's something we walk through. Bottom line is, really this is affecting more of our sophomores. For freshmen, right now we're still saying you need to plan on testing, so that way it is an option. If next spring, again, who knows, right? But next spring, colleges come out and say, no, we're totally trashing it, which I don't anticipate happening. But if it did, it would be our role to help communicate that to you. So help us. We trust us to help you in that process. It's not all on you. Obviously, you're welcome to follow all of this and look at the colleges. But right now it is, it's confusing and ever changing. So there are a couple colleges that have already come out and said test optional for our juniors. And some have said 3 years, which that's why I said it affects the sophomores. But no one is talking about how it affects the freshmen. Okay, I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Mrs. King. She'll walk you through the next part, and then Mrs. Sparks.
Good morning, and thanks for being with us today. Hey, you guys are going to have the benefit of learning about this amazing college planning and college admissions online program that we are launching. You're hearing it first today. Your kids will hear about it tomorrow and Tuesday in their Bible classes, and it's called SCORE. Okay, SCORE connects students with resources and people that support college discovery, personal connection, and application success. There are many components of SCORE, which I'm going to talk to you about in a few minutes. SCORE looks like a funny word, and kids are like, SCORE? Well, I found out that is a real word, okay? It's an Irish Gaelic verb, and it means to exit, retire, or transfer from one phase to another. And that's what high school is. It's your child continuing, through the grades and through this season of life onto the next season. And again, that's where Mrs. Benavides and I love to work with them and help them transition from high school into college. So that's a little bit about SCORE. I'm going to tell you some things that SCORE does. Mrs. Benavides already mentioned the resume. That's a huge part of SCORE, because now is the time that they can get started and start annotating these activities that they're already involved in. And this is set up very much like they're going to have to enter information on their college applications. So therefore, by keeping track of them, adding the hours per week, weeks per year, they'll have it by the time they need it at the end of their junior year, and they can just transcribe it into an application. So we start keeping track of all these activities in 9th grade. The resume is a living document, which will continue over the next 4 years. Oh, and I should say, we do have the students start working on this when we're in the classroom. We'll show them all the components of SCORE and actually get them to start their resume. Life Calling. I don't know, some of you may have older kids that have heard of this Life Calling class. This is a class that is going to aid them in discovering God's design and who they are and God's plan for them. Life Calling, they'll either be scheduled for it in this fall of their junior year or spring of their sophomore year. Did I say that backwards? Ms. Sparks is the one who sets it up. For Linda, 10th grade, it's the spring. Yeah, the spring. Okay. Just wanted to clarify that. So all of your kids will have the opportunity to go through this class. It is a required class. As a matter of fact, on that 4-year plan, you'll see that. And they'll be taking a career assessment through Life Calling class that integrates with SCORE. So all the information that they'll use on the assessments will be accessible through SCORE as well. And again, the career assessment is going to help propose careers that are going to match their aptitudes and interests. And again, this is something Mrs. Benavides and I have access to all this information, and we will work through and talk through the results of this. It'll aid the kids in knowing what courses they may want to take in coming years. And again, ultimately, college major that's best suited for them. Okay, this summer and going forward, on your handout, we've just listed several different things that you guys can do during the summer to aid in this process. Again, remember, we're in the discovery and explore phase. Visiting schools. I will say that it is never too early to start visiting colleges. It doesn't mean that your child's going to go or even apply to every one that they visit. But if you're on vacation, see what colleges are close to where you're vacationing. Make an appointment, go visit the college, eat in the cafeteria, have a look around. And the more the kids learn about what they want or what they don't want is going to aid in their college decision in the future. And again, we've got other things up here, reading books that they choose to read. It certainly makes a difference versus what we tell them to read. But volunteering and even working in Vacation Bible School, okay? Have them volunteer and work in the Church Vacation Bible School program. That's a great thing for them to do. Or during the summer, maybe they have more time to be Sunday school helpers. Okay, so any of these opportunities can be added to their resume. So summer activities definitely end up on the resume. So these are just a few ideas for you guys. All right, and how do we keep you informed of what's going on? On your MyPCA, under the Parent Guidance tab, we've been adding things to the bulletin board there, trying to just highlight some events that are coming. We'll have the actual date of the events. So we try to put as much information in the bulletin. And then on your topics, okay, you've got a tab for topics. There are several different topics for guidance, for scholarships, for events. We've got a page that's listed just a lot of websites that you might be interested in. So if you'll access MyPCA and you'll have that information. We also send out blasts on Instagram. So please join us on Instagram for those last minute reminders and information. The last slide you have is just some helpful websites. Like I said, it's not too early to start exploring. We'll talk more about application websites with the kids in a couple of years. But just to start having them, again, discover what's out there and some options. SCORE has an amazing college search program. And so going out there, taking virtual tours of schools is another great resource for them to use. Before I turn it over to Mrs. Sparks, I want to let y'all know we are going to have an open Zoom parent question and answer session sometime this month. So stay tuned, watch your emails. We'll be sending out the date soon, but it'll be an open forum that we'd all like you to attend. Right now, I will turn it over to Mrs. Sparks and we'll talk about scheduling for next year. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. we're going to go over the scheduling process. If your kids were here in 8th grade on, then they've already gone through this, so they're familiar with it, but sometimes it's a little new to the parents. We're going to meet with your students on the 2nd and the 3rd in their Bible class. We have the whole period to work with them. What we've already met with the grades above them, and what we found is that they're really getting, if not all, most of their scheduling in. So that's really a bonus for us because we can help walk through it. Any questions? Registration needs to be completed by 11:59 p.m. I say it that way because if I say midnight, they're always like, the day before or the day of. So 11:59 p.m. and it locks on February 10th. It locks them out of the system, so I can start working with all of the information to create the master schedule for next year. At that point, anytime after that point, the students have to go through me to make any changes. As well, there's a parent approval form. It's online. And it pops up in the window where it says forms approved, like when you log into My PCA and it's a yellow box. And that just needs to be approved. And that's just saying, letting us know that you've had a conversation with your kid. It doesn't mean that we can't change something. But for those of you that were here in 8th grade, we had a form and all 100 and whatever kids turned in the form. I tried to get away from that a couple years ago, but COVID has given me the benefit of saying we really aren't going to do that anymore. So that's what that form is. Email confirmations come out at the end of May, and a reminder, that's just confirming these are the courses that you are confirmed for. You qualify for. This is what the plan is. It's not their schedule. It is imperative that you pay attention and your student pays attention to that email, because that comes out around the end of May, like I said. If come August, you're all of a sudden saying, oh, actually, we wanted pre-AP, blah, 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 or whatever the class is, we're kind of past that point. If it works, it works. But otherwise, that's why we sent that out in May, was to work out the kinks earlier. So that's an important email. And then, of course, we pick up our schedules. Well, we don't pick them up. You get them released to you online on back to school day. So that's always an exciting day for them. Okay, this is the 4-year plan that Mrs. Benavides mentioned. This is my favorite document because it literally has everything. It's got your different graduation plans, your honors, courses that we offer, but I find that even working with my own kids, I tell them to look at the whole, 4 years, or I have 2 that are going to be juniors. So I've said, you guys need to look at your junior and senior year when you're trying to figure out your classes. So this is just a great document. If you lose it, we have it online. I also recommend that if you sit and fill this out with your student, it's a great idea to make a copy of it and have your student bring it by to us, or you can even email it to us, and we'll print it out and put it in their file. So then when they're working with their advisor, then they have a reference point for what you're thinking in the future. So we have college prep diploma, our distinguished diploma, and then the 2 honors are STEM honors and Lions Scholar. We go into great detail, into depth with your students on this, and as well, it's in that 4-year plan. Another place you can find information on it is in the course catalog guide. It is my second favorite document because it breaks down and gives you all the detail off of the 4-year plan. And that's all accessible through the resources on My PCA. Again, we're going to walk your kids through it, and there's going to be documentation that you can find all of this information. And then I'm going to go a little bit out of order. I'm going to let Mrs. Napier speak so she can actually get to her students to teach. So we're going to let her come up.
First favorite, second favorite. How many favorites do you have?
You're my first favorite.
Oh, okay. I get that a lot. No. As she said, my name's Lori Napier, and I'm the department chairperson for the math department. And I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of information. I want to speak into specifically thinking about next year, but also thinking about a little bit more long-term here. So as freshmen, right now, your kids will be either in Algebra 1 or Geometry. So in general, the progression at PCA, and really at 90% of schools, public, private, it doesn't matter. The math progression would be Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, Pre-Calculus, and then depending onto Calculus. So in general, that's our progression. Now, as freshmen and sophomores, there's not that much choice. The choice comes in at what level, okay? So in our department, we have two main levels from Algebra 1 through Pre-Calculus. We have what we call Pre-AP, and then we have the level called College Prep. And I want to give you a little bit of a caution, and hopefully I can speak this into you. I've tried to say this to students, but you know how it is. I don't know if they hear teachers sometimes any better than they hear parents. You know what I'm saying when you get the glazed over look. And I try to tell them, just because there's two levels, it doesn't mean high and low. That's not the case at all. When we say college prep, we mean college prep. We mean everything we do in there is because we want you to be prepared to go on and take that first course in college. And then the level up from that is what we call pre-AP. And it truly means that you are in a class, and our goal is to prepare you to be able to take an AP class. And an AP class means not just be ready to take that first year of college when you get there, but that means you're taking your first year of college here, your senior year. So I hope that kind of makes sense to you. So when you're thinking about scheduling, you know, please don't let the, I don't want to be in a low class. I am telling you, we don't have a low class in PCA math. We just don't. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right, so your choice for next year, if they're in Algebra 1, will be Geometry, and then we have the two levels, the pre-AP and the on-level, and the college prep, and then we have they might be going into Algebra 2. Now, once they get to be a junior or senior, you know, yes, the next level would, after Algebra 2, would be pre-calculus and then possibly calculus. At that point, as junior and senior, we add a couple levels. We have the AP, which could be an AP calculus, AP statistics. There's AP in a lot of different departments, and that's the one where they're earning college credit while they're in high school. And then we also have an honors class. It's called Honors Business Analysis, which is a dual enrollment class. And generally speaking, they would take that as a senior, where they could also enroll in the college that we work through. Do you know which college that one is? Texas Women's. So they can get a college credit through that business analysis class. And the way that class generally works, it's kind of like a first semester you're taking the class here at school with our teacher, but you're earning a college credit there. And then the second semester is kind of a intro to calculus so that you still could be ready at that level to move on into college, and if you choose to continue to pursue math or not. So anyway, there's a lot of choices. There's a lot more choices, I should say, when you get to be junior and senior. So something to keep in mind. So just to kind of give you an idea for next year, the placement process at PCA in general is this. There's a couple things that we look at. Yes, we look at current grades. We look at standardized test scores. But for me personally, I don't know that that's where guidance is. I think they're being as objective as possible and looking at all three. But for me personally, what I put the most stock in is teacher recommendation. The class that they're in right now, that teacher already has a sense for where that student should be. Do they need to move up a level? Are they not being challenged enough? Or are they being so challenged that they've become frustrated and maybe we need to try another level? Or are they doing fine and just continue to progress in the level that they're at? Just like Mrs. Benavides mentioned to you, if you have several different kids, you know them, they have different personalities. Yes, that's the same thing that's true as a student in our classroom. I don't just look at a grade and say, oh, well, you're making an A. You should be in a pre-AP, and you're making a C. You should be in a college prep. That's not the case at all, because when I look at a student's personality, it's much more kind of those grit things that Mrs. Benavides was mentioning earlier. I could mention a lot of things that make me think about how well that student's going to do. How often do they come in and ask me questions? What kind of questions do they ask? Are they willing to ask questions during class? Are they willing to come outside of class? How interested do they seem in the subject? You know, when they're in class working, is it, you know, always just the glazed over look, or is it more of an interest? And here's the thing, I'm not saying one's bad and one's good. I'm just saying those are all the things that you think about when you're like, where do you need to be next year? Where's the best fit for next year? So all of that kind of goes into what we think about as teachers when they are placed. So as I'm sure Ms. Sparks will continue to mention, she talked about your scheduling. There's going to be a course that's already pre-populated in that math, you know, as far as choosing. And that'll be the teacher recommendation. So if there's something that you feel like you need to discuss related to that, then that will be something that you'll talk to both Mrs. Sparks and myself and probably pull in that teacher, and just to kind of give you an idea of, okay, here's what that means. You know, go into it with your eyes wide open kind of thing. The other thing I was just going to mention is, as far as long-term, keep in mind, no matter what, they're going to have that chance to get at least through, at a minimum, through a pre-calculus. And as far as I'm concerned, that is an overwhelming preparation for that first college class. Yes, there's an opportunity to go beyond that, you know, to get those college credits now. But the pre-calculus that we offer, in fact, I have one of the pre-calculus classes this year, and I'm sure I will again next year. And my goal in that class is to make sure, and just to give you an idea, this is our college prep level that I'm even talking about. My goal in the pre-calculus class is, yes, to make sure that you're getting the content, but also you're getting the critical thinking skills. There are things that I tell my students all the time, you know, is it really that important that you memorize the unit circle? Probably not. But the way you're going about it, and the thinking skills that I'm taking you through to get you there, and the kind of questions that I'm asking, can you memorize it forwards? Can you memorize it backwards? Those are skills, those are college skills. So even though they may not say, oh yeah, we're just, you know, when am I ever going to use this? And you know, frequently my answer is you probably won't. But you'll use these thinking skills all the time if you can just buy in and believe that I know what I'm doing, if that makes sense. Hopefully you're buying in right now. Is there anything else specific that you want me to? Okay. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to talk person or email or whatever.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm just going to reiterate that I've got a senior that does have her, and what we're saying about the math department coming together to recommend the right course for your student, I can firsthand say they were spot on. I pushed one into another class, and the math department, both Mrs. Napier and the other teacher had another recommendation for her, and by semester we were taking that other recommendation very successfully. So we're very fortunate to have them and really partner with us to help our students be in the right class for them, just to have the most optimum success that they can. So just the progression of how the courses work, again, your kids are going to know this frontwards and backwards, they really already do, is that in 9th and 10th grade, we have our college prep and we have our pre-AP. And then going into our junior year, we have AP courses. We actually moved from the college prep terminology over to the honors. But it's the same weight, it's the same rigor of class. I'm sorry, we moved, as you can see, pre-AP to honors. So the way this works is, what we tell the kids is that you can only make one jump at a time. So again, when I talked about the 4-year plan and having a little forward thinking, as you can see over here for 11th grade, if a goal is to be in an AP class, and this isn't just for English, this is for our other courses. If a goal is to be in an AP class their junior year, then they need to be in the pre-AP class their sophomore year, because we can't jump from college prep. We can't do a double jump all the way to AP. We don't do it, and then they would not be prepared. It doesn't matter if they were making 110 in that English class in college prep. The jump to AP is just a whole nother ball game. So that's something to think about. Back to, if you'll look on your 4-year plan and you look at the diplomas, we have 2 diplomas that I'd mentioned. We have our college prep and we have our distinguished. So this takes me back to your 4-year plan. If graduating with the distinguished diploma is something that your student is also thinking about, it requires a minimum of 4 AP courses with particular scores, but they have to have 4 AP courses to graduate. And then you'll notice that there's 1 more credit than the college prep diploma, and that additional credit is the 3rd year of a foreign language. So those are just a couple things to think about moving forward. So Mrs. Benavides talked a little bit about, or both of them, I think, talked a little bit about the overwhelmness, underwhelmness. So we're staying the course, or do we need to challenge the student a little bit more? We'll talk to the kids about, do you do college prep or pre-AP? And then, of course, in 11th grade, as we move forward, we talk to them more about that and just about what the differences are and what the expectations are. We have a video that our department head in the science department made for us that the kids will have access to, y'all will too, really telling them what the difference looks like, just so they can get a better understanding of what that really looks like for them. Oh, we kind of went out of order there. Okay, so is your student ready for pre-AP courses? And these are just some factors to think about that we talk to them. Are they interested in the subject matter? That was a little bit what Mrs. Napier said. So it's not just in math, it's in everything. And understand that doesn't mean if they're not going to become a mathematician or they're not going to be an English major that they shouldn't move on to a pre-AP class. It's just if they're really not interested in the subject, it's going to be really hard to deal with these other things. You might make a B. You're going to have to work harder. You're going to have more hours put into the course. A big factor is missing class. That is a trend that we will see. When we're working with students that are having a difficult time in any class, but specifically the pre-AP or AP courses, and we look at everything, so we'll pull everything out. When you see a lot of missed classes, excused or not excused, it becomes very, very difficult for them to just stay on top of it. And the material, they really need to be able to work on some of that outside of class. It's not just all laid out in front of them. So it's just a step up, preparing them for what pre-AP does, AP, preparing you for college. So in our qualifications, yes, we put a lot of weight on the teacher recommendation. I would say Lori Napier was spot on with what the teacher recommends and really where we see that success. It's not always the case, but it's majority of the time they go pretty hand in hand. But we look at their PSAT and pre-ACT scores. We want 80% or higher. Pre-AP grade, an 85, I'm sorry, if they're in college prep now and they want to move to pre-AP, we're looking for a 90 or higher. And if they're in pre-AP now and they want to stay the course, an 85 or higher. And then of course, like she said, department recommendation. So we're really looking at a 2 out of 3 on that to feel really comfortable. No question, we're going to recommend this, and then you and your student can decide. I always tell the kids, it doesn't mean that you can't request it. It just means that if you're not meeting a 2 out of 3, we're going to initially say you don't qualify, and we're going to have a conversation about it. And because we want to set them up for success. The other thing that we point out to the kids is the difference in grading scale. It changes based on what course level you are in. And the main difference you'll see is in the testing. It goes up quite a bit. the 50% in a college prep is worth 50%, and then 60%, and then 70%. So our rising juniors this year, when we put this up there, they were like 70% for tests. So that's something to think about. What kind of student are you? You know, and even if you don't do well in tests, at least it prepares you to understand this might be a bit of a challenge for you, but that's a challenge is okay. Mrs. Napier mentioned the dual credit option for pre-cal, well, for some other courses, but this is what your students right now can do for dual credit, depending on where they are in foreign language. Dual credit, of course, is a way that they can get college credit while on campus taking the same course that the person right next to them is taking, whether that they're getting college credit or not. And our foreign language is actually through Texas Wesleyan. And if your student enrolls in one of these courses, there's nothing else that they need to do as far as they don't need to, you know, email me saying I'm interested in dual credit. If they're enrolled in one of these courses, you will get an email from Lauren Leineger, who is in charge of all of our dual credits, and she'll let you know how to register and apply to Texas Wesleyan to get enrolled in the dual credit portion of it. It is a fraction. Well, some of you probably already have college students, but I have one going to college next year. So looking at this, I'm like, oh, this is like beans compared to what a course is going to cost at a university. So it's a great opportunity for your student. Let's see, we're going to the curriculum guide online. That was what I mentioned. I'm just going to real quickly tell you, you go to the parent, you go to your login, you go to resources, and then you go to guidelines and handbooks, and it's in there. Again, your kids are going to know how to get there. We're going to send out a separate document to you later via email that's going to really take you through it. It'll tell you everything you need to know about a course, the prerequisites, what does it count for, what kind of elective does it count for, how long it is, and then a great description of it. So I tell the kids, have that open the whole time you're doing your course requests so you can read about it and see what might interest you. And then last, this is just our contact information. We are very accessible. If your student needs to come in and see any of us specifically and we're not available, they can talk to anyone in the office. We really team well in trying to get the questions answered for them. And if I don't have it, I definitely can help them find the right person with it. So I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Benavides, but thank you guys so much for being here today.
One thing I just want to reiterate is, I've already mentioned my PCA on the resource page. Also at the top, you'll have on your parent groups, you'll have a 9th grade parent guidance group. On there, we mentioned it, but I want to reiterate it. That's where we're putting everything. So even your handouts from today, the presentation. Mrs. Sparks has made a wonderful video that walks the students every single step through the scheduling process that they'll hear in class. We'll also have that posted on there. And then your students have a guidance group also where we put everything extra. On those parent guidance groups down the road, that's also where we'll be putting scholarships. But even for now, if we have a summer opportunity that we want to make sure everybody knows about, or if your student's interested in a military academy and there'll be an interest presentation, that's where we post all of that type of information. And then we also have the guidance Instagram where we'll put little reminders. And as we are getting into the spring semester and scheduling those college virtual meetings, that's where we start putting those on there also. So that way we're not flooding you with 50 emails a day. So we want to point you to that. We will stay here for a few minutes after, so that way if you have individual questions, and then anytime that you want to schedule a meeting, please feel free to do that. There's no timeline or requirement for amount of meetings. It's whenever you feel like you need one. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for this morning. Lord, we know this is a lot of information and it can be pretty overwhelming, but I pray that you'll help us discern it, help us process it. Lord, I pray for equipping for each parent here as they help support their student, help challenge them appropriately, Lord, with the gifts that you've already given. Lord, help us to love well our families. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.